Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Vivid Voltage, make sure you go ahead and check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code, Omnipoke. For today's video, we're going to be going over another week's worth of tournaments. There's been so many in the end of November going into the start of December. So many, in fact, that we're going to be going over, I think, 12 today. But I've had to cut out some of the ones with sub 75 attendance. So there's a ton more that I may not be mentioning, that if you've looked over them, you'll be thinking, why isn't there that spicy deck that I saw? It's because, you know, when it's sub 75 player tournament, you don't really know how valid the data is. Sometimes there's only a couple of rounds and they've won the tournament. So I'd rather keep things a little stricter, especially when I have so much data for, you know, higher level events already to go off of. Plenty of, you know, plus 100 player tournaments as we go from the 26th up to, I believe the 4th is what I'm going up to. Which is probably this one, I think it is. So yeah, plenty to talk about. Let's jump into deck lists and talk about what I think the format's turning into and how it's going to be adapting. So I think already we've seen a big difference from week 1 meta as we've progressed through. So yeah, we'll have a look at those. We'll start with the Flygon Open, which was the Thanksgiving event with 88 players. It was won by Eternatus. I'm going to stick to just looking at the top 4 deck lists because there's already so much to go through. And I'm hoping at this stage we're going to start seeing a bit of normality come in, a bit of same old, same old. Hopefully a lot of people are going towards certain lists and making it more standardized, because that's normally what you see as a format gets kind of figured out, I guess you could say. You find much more that, you know, the correct lists start coming over and over again, and the ones that were kind of wackier start to fall off. So we'll start off with this Eternatus. Seems to be a straight Eternatus build with Crushing Hammers and Power Plants. For me, my concern is that you don't have enough Marnies to really defend against aggressive decks like Blacephalon. Power Plant does help though in that matchup. Crushing Hammers are good for Mirror and a handful of other decks as well, of course. Reset Stamps in. I guess the 2 Marnie 2 Stamp is a decent option. Leon's an interesting one. So your cap is, I guess with Zigzagoons, that can be a way for you to knock out, but just a one-of is quite random. I think for something like this, I'd kind of like to see some spaces committed to Pokegears if you were going to play Leon. Pokegears are quite nice. Rather than having like the 4th count of boss, for example, you can weave in gears, which are then instant playable if you want a dark asset for more cards, but also gives you reach for the specific supporters when you need them. So I think that would be something that I try and work into this build. You can see it's extremely tight though, because Crushing Hammers take up a lot of spaces, but I think quite often we've seen that the straight Eternatus builds just say, you know what, I'm probably losing to Zamazentas anyway. What's the point in me putting in like Sableyes when they're not really doing enough? So essentially you're either playing the poison build to actually respect Luke Metal, or you're just playing a straight list like this, which is being pretty aggro, but lots of disruption in here with the 4 crushing, the power plants and the stamps. So quite a defensive build really of the deck, I guess you could say, that was able to take the win there. Mewtwo came in second, and obviously Power Plant getting a lot more value with Mewtwo, and Mew being a big deck in its own right, but also being played in Pikachu and Zekrom based builds as well. Here you can see fairly standard build of the Mewtwo. Vikavolt V is in and out of the list. I think there's been a bit of a drop off of Whimsicott. I think the hype has sort of died down from it a little bit. It's kind of getting figured out. I think there's enough Vikavolt kind of floating around that it scares Whimsicott away a little bit. That's not to say that it's not like a terrible deck now or anything, but it can be a scary one, but still has awkward openings. This is a pretty straightforward Mewtwo-based build, though. Nothing too surprising to see here. We've seen basically all of these attackers in the toolbox. Incineroar GX isn't always in the list, but can be a decent option, especially in some like lightning-based mirrors, like regular Pikarom, because they so often full blitz into you, and if you can just like one-bop them or their Choo-Choo, it's going to be trouble for them. Then we have a Welder-based Aurora list coming in top 4. It really feels like the lightning-based Mewtwo is pulling away at being the best one, but Welder list is still sticking on in there. Playing good old-fashioned Stellar Wish. I remember seeing some amazing Red Jirachi builds, but when you already played this many switch-outs, it kind of makes sense to have Stellar Wish, and obviously they're leaning into it as much as possible with Zigzagoon and Giratina. Ziggy Net was a way for you to reach on tag team Pokemon, VMAX Pokemon, which is pretty decent with your Charizard GX Flare Blitz GX attack. So that's interesting. Obviously, you're playing Auroras so that you can weave in Milotic rather than just having the special Psychic Energy. So yeah, pretty cool to see Scoop Up Nets making a comeback. Obviously, the Giratina can be a way to get rid of coating metals as well, which lets you lean into the fire part of your deck a lot more reasonably. Just one reset stamp's a little bit triggering, but otherwise, you know, seems pretty okay. Because reset stamp's such a big card for Mewtwo. Then we have a Pikarom that made top 4. Plenty of Pikaroms to talk about this week. And this looks like a pretty reasonable shell. I think there's basically 2 builds of Pikarom going around at the moment. There's some that are very similar to this list that are playing Quad Crushing and Energy Switches. And recently, Tord and Pedro have been playing a ton of lists, well, a ton online by just having complete straightforward Pikarom with Mewtwo. And they're going as far as playing like 4 Air Balloon, 4 Bolton, just to say, let me have a good turn, please, oh please. And then they like max out copies of Boss and Marnie. So Crushing Hammers are like still just such a win condition in certain matchups that you can see why it's being played, but there's also the sort of just draw good builds of Pika, which is getting a good amount of attention as well. And I think for good reason, the deck seems very solid. But as a baseline for the hammer-based build, this looks very straightforward and usual. I'm still a big believer of playing the 4th Speed Lightning because the card is bonkers and it gets you out of so many bad situations. I know that when you're playing the Mewtwo and Mews so heavily, there's a reason why you don't play the full 4, but I'm still a big believer in playing those Speed Lightnings, but there you go. A pretty nice straightforward list for the first Pikarom of the day. Next up, we have the Limitless Online Series Weekly that was 277 players. These are getting big boy numbers coming in. That's like a special event in Europe, 277. So yeah, real big deal of a tournament. And Pedro was able to take the win with, you know, partly his own creation, the Mewtwo-based variant. And again, it's not anything too different that we've seen from the previous one just earlier on. Yeah, pretty straightforward, pretty strong deck, I would say. So we've got a good shell there. We've had a good shell for a while, and Pedro is proving that he's just an insane player. Center Scorch got 2nd place as well as top 4 by the looks of things. So the Fion's become quite mainstream in Center Scorch, and I really do think from what I've played with it so far, it's a really hard carry against ADP. Makes life very, very difficult for them. It means you don't need to draw like the Uber Nuts to knock out ADP straight away. It means that you can just push things to the back and you take easy KOs onto Denes and Zacians in the early turns. And that's really detrimental for them because the Center Scorch still gets big and grows up to the point where it can knock out an ADP the following turn. And then it's down to you just, you know, like weaving in Heatran or something to deal with their Zacian afterwards. It's a really good route to victory. A lot less resource intensive than having to, you know, get the guaranteed Flare Starter onto, then Welder for 3 more energies onto the Center Scorch. So kind of lets you YOLO a little bit less, which I think is cool. Other than that, playing 1 reset stamp is a bit of a bugbear, really. It's one of those cards where it's like, it's 2-1 none when you play this much discard, or this much reliance on Dedenne, I would say. Giratina is still being played. Interestingly, Luke Metal has dropped off like quite a lot from what I could see in this week's tournaments. So the Giratina may be getting diminishing returns now that it's kind of been scared off by the amount of Center Scorch that was early on in the meta. And it's still kind of stuck around, to be honest. Center Scorch is still one of the top decks for sure. But yeah, decent looking list by the looks of things. I much prefer seeing 4 Center Scorch V than just 3 that I've seen in a bunch of decks. Not seeing Cramorant as well. Cramorant's a card that I really like in the deck. Just similar reasons to the Fion, really. You just like having something that can welder for game rather than having to have energy already scattered around your board for boss's orders. Otherwise, looks pretty good. I think I'm just a little bit tilted by the one-off stamp. It's interesting to see both Quad Stellar Wish and 2 spaces committed to gear. I think oftentimes this would be, you know, like a one-of like Bird Keeper, for example, or Malolana that can help out against the paralysis from a Raichu, which I'm kind of a fan of, by the way. And also like that second reset stamp. So it's kind of, the Poké Gear is potentially flexible for those cards that I just mentioned. Otherwise looking pretty safe, pretty solid, to be fair. And then we have the top 4 list. Is it going to be pretty similar? It is looking pretty similar. So this one's playing the Wondrous Labyrinth over a Centiskorch V, which is kind of sad. It's also playing Zigzagoon for that flexible damage. It's reasonable, right? Because there's just so many breakpoints that you go up on with the Centiskorch. This one's playing an additional Fire Crystal as well, but I do like the Birdkeeper edition. I found that useful whenever I've been playing Centiskorch recently. So yeah, that's pretty okay. This isn't playing the Fione though. I would definitely suggest trying out the Fione. It does make life more difficult for those ADPs for sure. Finally, in the top 4, we see a Blacephalon, 19 energy Blacephalon. I still can't get to grips with 19 energy Blounds. I really can't. I've been trying Blounds low-key in the background. I was thinking of doing 100 games of Blounds, if you can believe that. But it's quite triggering to play, especially if you play a 19 energy base build. I've been doing some Players' Cup coverage, and there's a Blacephalon deck that gets through to the global finals, I believe. That's not a spoiler. Those games have already happened. And it does, it has quite a different build. It's playing double Cramorant, and I think, no spoilers, Cramorant is a good card in Blounds. Maybe good enough to play 2 copies. And Reshizard is also really good against Pika Rom as well. Reshizard is so good against Pika because you can detonate the Boltund, and then as long as you play Zigzagoon, you're threatening Flare Strike for a KO on them with a Zigzagoon ping. So it's one of the best ways that you can combat the modern age of Pika, which is just trying to Marnie and swell you. Because if you get that one Welder onto a Reshizard, it's still just backbreaking. So my current build of Blounds would definitely be playing Reshizard. I think it's super, super good. Still, it's so such a good closing card against like ADP and stuff. You're forcing that like one of Leon, or you're still forcing like Boss's Orders, which is like always their win con anyway. So giving them like one more supporter out doesn't change like your loss condition too much in terms of percentages. But also it's just like, rather than you digging for like 6 energy, you dig for 3 and then just GX them. And it's really good against Pika Rom because it's early tempo on Boltund, which then becomes a knockout onto Pika Rom quite a lot. So yeah, I think I'd like to see that weaved in. I think Reshizard's still just super good. 19 energy. It's just like there has to be too much money in the format for 19 energy build to be right. Like, I know we're seeing results of it over and over again, but like, just because some people have had results with it doesn't mean like it's correct necessarily. It's weird to say that. Like, it's clearly got power behind having that many energies because you just see so many. But logically, the amount of Marnie and Swell in the format makes me think that I just want to have cards that give you instant value. So rather than Intrepid Swording and making Marnie better, try and use like Cramorant just to snipe prizes that are around, or try and use a Reshizard that sits on the board and is actually a threat and is awkward to deal with for the Pikarom players. Like, surely that makes more sense. So anyway, just my thoughts on Blacephalon after trying out a 19 energy build and just being like, this is truly Lego. Like, I don't think you'll ever see an EXO Blounds. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are some later on in the standings, but like, they'll always take L's because there's just way too much Marnie Swell combo in the format right now. Like, ADP's playing Swell, Pika Rom's playing Swell, Mewtwo plays Swell. There's so much of it. Just feels gross to commit so much to just energy cards, to be honest. Right, we see the first ADP win. This is a 143 player tournament, the Hexter Season 3, number 10. And it looks like we got a ADP on our hands. Looking pretty reasonable. Squeezing in those 4 crushing hammers. You hate to see it. Well, I hate to see it anyways. Little bit scared of only playing 2 waters when there are so many hammers around. Like, you can expect Mirror. You can expect a regular Pika Rom that isn't like the full toolbox. You can expect Eternatus now can even play crushing hammers. Like, 2 water makes me so afraid. Like, obviously you try and commit a metal in those opening stages anyway. But if a hammer just comes off and you still want to weave in Ultimate Ray, it's just shut down from you so much. These hammers eat into so many spaces. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I play a lot of ADP, and I still feel sketchy when I'm playing, like, 4 Cherish Ball that I get my turn 1 attachment on ADP. So Crushing Hammer just makes me nervous. It makes more sense in Pikarom because they're so happy to just like electrify, pass, and then their attacks are set up for the rest of the game because they full blitz and then they have like 3 attackers established. So the only thing they're drawing into is Crushing Hammers or, you know, any other players like reset stamps. Those are all they're looking for at that point, or more energy attachments. Whereas ADP's early game is just way more work than just getting a Bolton into the active. So I'm still against hammers in ADP, just personally. I know they are a win condition, though. But it makes me nervous only playing 4 outs to water, only like 8 outs to ADP pre-supporter when you always want to be going first, you know. And 8 sounds like a lot of outs, but it could be 10. And every time you have access to an ADP, it allows you to Dene change more often or Crobat more often. I like the 2-2 split. That's really good. I'm not sure if Tool Scrapper's better or worse than Vitality Band these days as well. Luke Metal's kind of going down in play. Vitality Band allows you to kill Mewtwo and Mews, which so many Mewtwo's are trying to... Well, Mewtwo and Pikarom now using Mewtwo. They're trying to tank with the Mewtwo so much more. I think Vitality Band is low-key like broken in ADP again. I've been playing online recently with double Vitality Band. Sometimes even just one copy of Vitality Band. And it seemed really good for me. So, spoiler, I think Vitality Band's becoming important enough again. And when we look at the stats of what decks are doing well, for me it makes sense to play Vitality Band, at least as a 1 count in modern ADP. Okay, so we have another pretty straightforward Pikarom, Crushings, and Energy Switches. Again, I think this is a list that we've basically already covered. Tons of data entry points for Pikaroms if you wanna start looking at those lists. And Crushing Hammer makes the most sense in Pikarom because you're so chill at just being like, okay, Electrify, you'll go, Electrify, you'll go, you know? It's just so easy. Yeah, again, pretty straightforward type of build. Big Charm, I'm not too... I mean, Big Charm on a Mewtwo, I guess, is good. Big Charm on a Mewtwo ruins my Vitality Band idea, but it's a one-off that they have to find anyways. And then we have a Center Scorch again that we got to look at. Okay, so we're weaving in the Fione. 3-3 line makes me sad face. Looks like most people have landed on Stellar Wish being their main engine rather than just pure Crobat, Dedenne, Eldegoss in like the 2 of counts in each category. Great Catcher, I don't know if I prefer that to Cramorant or not, but it's a good thing to draw into for sure, and it can be a win condition, so seems reasonable. And there's a lot of tag teams back in the format right now, like ADP obviously plays Dedennes and ADPs. Like, Eternatus is going down in play, right? And every other deck plays Dedenne, so Great Catcher is, like, good in the format again, I think, in the semi-tag team-based decks. Next up, we have a $500 cash tournament that 383 people entered, so lots of people coming in for this one. And it was, surprise, surprise, Pikarom taking the dub. Playing Crushings, playing the Yell Grunt as well as an additional count. 4 Marnie, I think, is really, really good right now. Like I said, like I keep saying, like, Pikarom is so easy to get going. Its opening turns are so chill. It's like, just get an Electrify, and then find a switch card the next turn to Full Blitz. That's like all you need to do. It's like so chill that you can literally just be like spamming people on low hands in the opening turns, whilst also whenever you hit a Crushing or whatever along the way, you make life really awkward for them. And decks have the potential to brick. Like, it's so annoying for all the Welder decks, and Center Scorch is a really big deck in the game. It's really annoying for Eternatus, especially if they're playing Poison build. They have so many janky cards in their deck with all the stage 1s rattling around in there. It's annoying for ADP, especially if you get a Crushing Hammer heads, because they're looking for Saucer, E-Switch, attach combos, and that's difficult. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of Quad Marnie in the Pikaroms. I think it's really good. So yeah, appreciate that list. I think it's solid. Blounds came in second. 19 energy Blounds, continuing to do well. People are just out here spiting me with 19 energy Blounds, right? This has to be a troll. Still not playing Reshizard. I mean, I have my own opinions of Blounds, but I'm also a Blounds skeptic, so I'll leave it to you guys to be the judge, I guess. More Pikarom in the top 4. This is very similar to the previous list, but it's playing the second Swell. 1 and 2 Swell is really just up to your opinion, how much you respect the Welder-based decks, essentially. Or how much you think you're going to see ADP and other, like, mirrors more often. I think you'll see so much mirror that 1 Swell is, like, a decent count, to be honest. We have an ADP that made top 4 that's playing some spicy stuff. It's got Jirachi Amazing Rare. It's got Crobat. Oh, sorry, not Crobat. What's it called? Hooper. and Milotic. So some really interesting counts here. Just the one spinner, so still only 4 outs to water energy. But I kind of prefer having the third count, like I said, just because you're so vulnerable to other people's hammers. 3 switch makes me so sad though, like makes me actually so sad. Crushing hammers take so many spaces for ADP. Also, I would always play Oranguru over Jirachi, I think, almost always. I'm just not a believer of crushings in ADP. Like, obviously, again, they're getting results, and I can't argue with it too much. But it just... Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Like, there's so much money in the format. Like, Pikarom is rising, right? Pikarom's becoming more and more powerful, and Mewtwo is seeing a lot more play as well. And these are all spam Marnie decks. So when spam Marnie is in the game, you just have to play as simple as possible. You just have to really simplify your deck as much as possible. Like, I'm always someone who likes to simplify and just make it as one trick as possible. So it suits my playstyle that it's a Marnie Fiesta right now. We've got an ADP that won. Is this the one that won? Yes. Playing double Leon. Bro, smacking people out here. So double Leon's weird. I think 1 Leon, 1 Vitality Band is pretty good. I think I would play that over 2 Leons almost always, but you do slap some people with Leon, that's for sure. So look how much nicer the counts are when you don't have to play Crushing Hammers, you know? My only real kind of fear factor is that you're playing Viridians in this list. And that makes you really bad into Blounds and Center Scorch. Fion pushing stuff as well is pretty interesting. Giving them that little push, making your Ball Search go a little bit further. That seems reasonable. I don't like Wonder Dene though. It makes me really nervous to just play Wonder Dene, it's so pog. Yeah, interesting. Interesting counts there still. Like... I like the amount of access he has to water. Makes him combo heavy, which is nice. But if you're going combo heavy, you have to play second Dedenne at least, and probably second Crobat as well. Interesting. And I'm always going to tell you to play full Zacian as well, by the way, obviously. Mewtwo coming in at second place. I'm basically just complaining that people are playing hammers this video. Here's a straightforward Mewtwo. You'll love to see it. No crushing hammers in sight. We got Luke Metal that did make a top 4 here. It was touted to be one of the strongest decks thanks to Coating Metal, but it really hasn't lived up to that expectation. Even though we've only seen a couple of ADPs actually playing Leon, and there's not too much difference going on out there. So this is playing Power Plants as its stadium of choice. Makes sense when there's a decent amount of Mewtwo rocking around and it can slow down radar plays from Pikaroms and stuff like that as well. Playing the Aegislash V in here. Is Aegislash V more or less effective than just playing a Stunfisk? Because Stunfisk can be good at skewing the prize race against Baby Blounds as well. That's actually interesting. I guess the upside of Aegislash is if you start it compared to a Stunfisk in other matchups, it's tanky. Like, it's almost as tanky as the dogs. And if you start a Stunfisk, it gets bodied, and then you can't weave in Luke Metal quite as comfortably. That's a question, though. I don't know if Aegislash is actually that much more effective. Interesting. Otherwise, though, we've got the one-of tag call. I think you gotta play more because access to Luke Metal is so important. I would always play 4 Zacian as well with so few Pokemon in the deck. Committing spaces to Crushings, though. It's always like... I'm always thinking about these counts, and I'm always like, where can I +1, +1, +1? It's like, I look straight at Crushing Hammer, like, my eyes just bulge. I'm like, you've cut those 3 cards that I want to add into the list to just play these instead and flip cards. Like, how much nicer would your openings be if you played second Tag Call, 4th Zacian, and like, I know it sounds wacky, but like 14th Energy. Or just 1 Guzhala even, so you have access to coating in the matchup that is actually important. Or like just the Tag Call, so you never miss Malolana against Pikarom, even though they're stamping you down and stuff. Because let's face it, Pikarom is always trying to like buy turns by paralyzing and stuff. I don't know, it's a question mark. Are Crushing Hammers broken, guys, or are they just making everyone else's lists worse because they're bricking more? That's a question. Ah, Blounds that I can get behind. It's playing Cram and Reshizard. You'll love to see it. But if you do play Reshizard, you have to play the Zigzagoon. It makes you much, much better against Pikarom. It makes Flare Strike danger. It makes you the danger. But I'm happier with this list. I can get behind this one. Yeah, this is a Blown right here. I'm happy with this list for sure. Reshizard is bonkers. I like that list. Congratulations, Blown man. You've done well. Alright, next up, Pikarom winning a 76 player event. My cutoff was 75, so this tournament makes it. And it's a pretty standard Pikarom, making space of a double Yell Grunt. Bro, that's just bullying at that point. Playing Scrapper as well, that's not totally common in the deck. Pretty spicy. So what are the counts that are quite low? I guess 1 Choo-Choo, 1 Mewtwo is kind of low counts. No Coco V or anything like that going on. But I mean, that's the risk you take by playing double Yell just to make the spaces. We got an ADP coming in at second. Has there been an ADP that I've completely agreed with yet? I don't think there has been. This one's playing Crushing, so you know this one's already out the window. Only 3 outs to Water Energy! No! No! Oh, the betrayal. You're playing my Milotic with only 3 outs to Water Energy. Ah! Ooh, let's click off that before I say words I can't say because of YouTube. Oh my god. Right, okay. We see a Colossal in top 4. You don't see this too much. So, nice. Okay, yeah, so Colossal playing Shadow Box. So you actually bully the Mewtwo's now. It's so sad that the fighting deck actually has to play a tech to beat the lightning decks now, but it makes a lot of sense. I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking how I was going to be building Colossal, because I saw that it wins one of the tournaments coming up. And Shadowbox definitely makes a lot of sense just to actually have an auto win against those decks, or a much better time against those decks. You at least make life tricky for them, right? Making your damage actually go somewhere. Got the buff, got the strongs, got the Rotom phone engine coming in here. Pretty nice, pretty nice. Got the one Surf fetched. I think Colossal is low-key, like, weaving into a slightly better position. I think the Luke Metal's going down in play, and I think there's enough... Like, let's face it, Pikarom and Mewtwo are, like, both in the top 5 decks in the format, so Colossal actually has, like, better placement. It's going to be one of those things where there's enough of a spike in Pikarom, but then the Colossal comes in, and then the wave of Luke Metal comes back and just kills the Colossal. So it's like, at this point, like going into the latter stages of the week, you can see why Colossal was becoming in a better placement. But it could like hit a tipping point where it actually spikes a tournament, and then people think about it again, and you know, it's weird, right? You always have to pick your moment with the Colossal. It's never going to be Bediff, right? It's not good enough to be Bediff, but it's still a well-placed archetype. Alright, we've got a spicy Aurora Energy build of Mewtwo that's playing the Jolteon for the Swift Run GX. Haven't announced that attack in a long time. But yeah, this looks pretty reasonable. Playing Zigzagoon without any Scoop Up Nets and without any Jirachi is a little bit weird. 310. Well, what other number are we hitting that's super important? This is too big for my brain. It just kind of looks out of place when you don't play Scoop Up Nets. It's a lot less flexible. Otherwise, pretty okay. The one-off research, you love to see it. Alright, and that's the top 4 of that one. Next up, we have another Hexter, number 11. This is 177 players, won by a Pikarom. And like I keep saying, I'm not against hammers in general. I think Pikarom should be the only deck in format playing Crushing Hammers. That's my own opinion. Because they need so few resources that they're allowed to be Marnieing and Crushing most turns. Looks like we're seeing a lot of Yell Grunt in the list. It's becoming the one-of standard card. Just to be an additional Crushing that actually works. And plays like Yell Grunt Stamp are pretty good plays that can get you back into the game if you can't paralyze, those sorts of things, you know. We do see a Poison E-turn coming in second. Looks pretty reasonable to me. Looks pretty reasonable. Yeah. It's just a beat stick version of Eternatus, right? And that's fine. We see another Pika-Rom in the top 4. Again, these are all becoming much of a muchness. At least Pika-Rom is like, it's almost nailed on, right? You've got like 2 cards of wiggle room, or you're either choosing to not play Crushings and then you play a lot of different cards. But Pika-Rom is like nailed on, and it's doing super well right now. Alright, we've got a Senti that thinks that a Talonflame V is better than putting a 4th Centiskorch V in the deck. And is happy only playing 1 reset stamp, which makes me nervous. You just find it, you know? Just find it at the right time. Interesting. Again, like, I think this slot is just way better used as, like, Cramorant, Fione, even Great Catcher, arguably. Centiskorch V. 3rd Jirachi, because 2's pretty greedy. When you're committing 4 spaces to scoop up nets, you only play 2 Jirachi? That's like such a weird split. Like, you'd play 3 and 3 first, right? Surely you'd play 3 and 3 first. Weird counts going on. Okay. We'll go on to the next tournament, which is an 80-player event, won by your boy Pika-Rom. It's really smashing it right now. It's going deep into these cuts, right? And that's because it's a really good tempo deck, but it's also got so much defensive, like, springboard cheeky ways back into the game, because Stamp Paralysis or just Crushing Hammers going nuts or Stamp Yell Grunt plays, you know. There's so many good things you can do with the Pika-Rom. Really scary archetype to play against right now. And one of the most consistent, so you can see why it's doing well. It's another Blown. It plays 15 energy! Are my dreams coming true? Oh my goodness, he's... Okay. So he's back to... He's playing 1 Rod, 1 Retrieval, 15 energy. 4 Spinners, yo! He's just going aggro, let me go second or I lose. Okay. So I've said that I don't like... This is so weird. Okay, but Spinners are aggro, which I kind of like. But I would still play a Reshizard. Probably cut to 3 Spinners. They get massively diminishing returns. But it does let you go aggro. And I do like aggro. And I like picking Spinners from Stellar Wishes going second and literally blowing people up. Marshadow makes a lot of sense right now. There is so much swell in the format that Marshadow is so good. I would still definitely be arguing for Reshizard though. I think he's pretty dope. We got an ADP in top 4. What do you guys think about Reshizard, by the way? I know there are Leons rocking around in the ADP deck, but it's still busted against Mewtwo, I think. And regular Pika-Rom. Right, this ADP is hammer-based. Everyone's just on the hammer train right now. I want people off this train, not gonna lie. It makes sense for Pika-Rom, but it doesn't make sense for every deck, you know? Makes sense for Pika-Rom, though. Like, every Pika-Rom's just jamming the 4. And it makes sense for that deck. Alright. We have Full Grip Games, which is a 59-player tournament, which I shouldn't really be showing because it's not enough people, but I might have put it on my statistics, so we'll just quickly go over it. I thought I cut off at 75. Maybe I cut off at 50. Okay, so this is the 1990 build. Super standard. Grit your teeth. Just smile. Let me know what you guys think about 19 Blowns, by the way. We've got a Pika-Rom. Okay, so this is the no hammer Pika-Rom. Oh no, I'm completely wrong. They're just in a different spot because of a count that's different to normal. Is there something that I'm missing? Oh, it's playing no like Vikavolt or Tapu Koko V. Okay. Seems still pretty normal though. Pika-Rom's basically always the same. Couple Eternatus in top 4. This one's playing weak guards. Yo, he's prepared. This man's prepared. It's weird, right? Because there is a good amount of reason to play Colossal. But Colossal still can't one-bop you until they get to the big 240. And typically you're killing it in a 2-shot manner, so how much do they actually 240 you? I don't know, I still feel like I'd rather a different energy for Eternatus. This one's again playing the 4-4-4 and 1 Leon and just trying to find it at the right time. It is game winning if you Leon on the right turn though. I don't know, am I wrong in thinking that Poker Gears to make that Leon more effective? Is that a bad idea? I don't know, it seems good in my head. And then we have a poison build, which is again very similar to the one that we saw previously. To round out that tournament. We're getting there, guys. We're getting to some more ADP. Please tell me you're not playing Crushings. Please, someone play a consistent list. Well, they're flipping different coins. Okay. One of these days, we'll just see a normal ADP. This one's just saying, give me that boy at the back over there. Give me him. But I like Oricorio. He's a spicy boy. Oricorio is really nice against Eternatus as well. Eternatus is still seeing enough play that I think it's worth it to put back in the deck. And there's so much Stamp Pika that it could be worth it against that deck as well. We see another ADP. They've got second. Made space for Stamps. I think it's never worth it. Pikarom and Mewtwo sit with game on board. Centiskorch sits with game on board against you so much. The Stamps just don't make much sense in ADP anymore. You don't even play Swell, so you're not ever stopping Blounds with a Stamp because they're just going to Oricorio anyway. Like, you'd have to Stamp Boss to even have a chance, but even then they'll sit with Hearth in play. Probably Hearth, find Welder from Stellar Wish and still be in with a chance of detonating you. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Stamp in ADP. It doesn't make sense against a lot of decks. Pikarom coming in, crushing. This one's playing Tag Switch. That's pretty retro. Playing Mew as well. Whoa, what's Mew here for? Mew can't be here for Mirror, right? The game's already over if they're ever tag bolting you. You lost like 2 turns earlier if they can tag bolt you. Is it for Cramorant in Blounds? No. I don't think Mew is that much value. That one creative space with Pikarom. That one slot that you have to play with. Okay, we have a Hammer ADP. Everyone playing Hammers. I'm just here saying nope, and everyone's just saying brrrr. Alright, anyway. We've got Pikarom winning again. He's playing all the spicy supporters. Leon's pretty pog, you know. Leon can do some dirty work in the format. I think Francesco was actually a player in the Players' Cup Global Finals, I'm pretty sure. Pretty spicy. Still playing Vikavolt too. We got ourselves a Decigoons that got second. Remember me? What is this now? Okay. This is less greedy than the last Decigoons that I saw, that's for sure. I'm still kind of scared of the amount of Marnie spam in the format, but Aromatics are strong. Quad Catcher's strong. Shadowbox is a good card. There's some good stuff here. I think it's okay. I mean, if you want to play a stage 2, it looks like an okay build. Still a pretty scary deck to play. Got another Pikarom though. In a top 4. Again, at this point, I may just stop clicking on Pikarom because you can expect to see the same 59 or 58 cards. There's like personal preference cards of like sometimes a Tag Switch, I guess. Sometimes a Scrapper, sometimes a Yell Grunt. What is this doing here? I'm sorry, but you should never play an Ordinary Rod in this deck. Surely you should never play Ordinary Rod. Wild. Wild. That's wild. That's actually a wild slot. Did I just look at that list? Yeah, that's the Rod list. Okay. Last tournament. Big Boy Colossal coming in with the big W shape. Okay, I like the Pokemon lineup quite a lot. It's pretty straightforward. I do think if you really want to bully the Mewtwo builds and the other builds, you've got to play that Shadow Box, but look what it's taken for Colossal to win a tournament. It's your boy Crushing Hammer. Someone save me from this format, man. Why is Crushing Hammer the best card in the game right now? Oh, it makes me so upset. I really like the engine, though. The engine for this deck looks really good. It's like the most straightforward Cole man you've ever seen. Just trying to get the job done. Not going too deep into the heals. Like, you're not seeing all the Malolana shenanigans. It's just trying to buy time with crushings and drawing normally. Spicy. Pretty interesting to see no heal for Colossal, though. That's normally the first thing you associate with Colossal. But apparently flipping heads on crushings is the win con for this deck all along. It beats Center Scorch in finals? How? Center Scorch is so favored into that matchup. Especially with no heals. That's wild. Okay. Pretty reasonable Senti. Victini V you don't see too much anymore. Double Stamp I like. Energy Count I like. Super Thick Boy Jirachi. Quite a consistent list by the looks of things. Great Balls. You don't often see Great Balls in the list. You normally just see comms. Interesting. So taking away some of the Pokemon text, like only playing one Eldegoss. Only playing one Crobat. Like sometimes these are even thicker. Playing a Great Ball over the 4th Senti. I don't mind this list too much. I'm not sure how much I like 3 Boss either. You don't actually weave in Boss that much with Senti. I think I'd prefer a Fione to the 3rd Boss. I need to do an update for my lists. I've only just I've talked about my preferences so much. But I haven't talked to... Vitality Band! Yay! Okay, Vitality Band is Pog. Good man. You are playing Crushings, though, so I can't give you too much credit, but... I knew I was right to think Vitality Band's good in the format again. Oricorio is Pog in the format again as well. I'm happy that I can put Oricorio back in my deck for ADP. And then we got Eternatus rounding out this last top 4. And then we'll look at the updated ranking of decks. So this is an interesting Eternatus. It's playing double Great Catcher. Bruh. That's wild. Gimme those easy tag teams. That's pretty aggro. And again, Great Catcher is such a good card in the format right now because, you know, every deck that isn't Eternatus, you can get value from, right? It's like, it's only Luke Metal and Eternatus where Great Catcher's dead, and every other matchup, it's so Pog. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I kind of like that. That's aggro. And it's way easier for Eternatus to research than Great Catcher. And that's pretty goddamn game winning against Pika as well, actually, thinking about it now. Eternatus... Whoa, what if Eternatus dropped hammers and played 3 Great Catchers so that you could research and Crobat and try and detonate their Pika-From that they've electrified to on turn 2? That sounds broken. Do you even need to play Poison Build anymore? I'm trying to think. Okay. I'm going to have to go to the drawing board with Eternatus, but I think 3 Great Catcher is wild, and I think Leon could be a better answer than Poison Build. So play straight Eternatus that plays many Great Catchers and tries to say, oh, you electrified? Now get detonated. That sounds broken for this format. What's it bad against? Not too much, right? That sounds really good. You know, I haven't done an Eternatus list in a long time on the channel either. We're doing updated lists this week. I've just been super busy recording the global finals for the official Pokemon stream. Weird flex, but okay. You know? But yeah, that's all the tournaments. So let's have a look at the placement breakdown. So I've done it for the snapshot of the week that we've just looked at, and also then we'll talk about the total. So this week, huge uptick in Pikarom. Pikarom's been steadily seeing more and more placements in play. Like, it was, what, the joint 4th most played deck alongside Luke Metal. So, And Luke Metal's really gone down in play. Like, there was 6 Luke Metal placements the previous week, and then this week there's been only 1, and it was just a random top 4. Like, that's pretty crazy. No one played Whimsicott to a placement this week. Picarom's just gone massively up in play. Like, look at this. So much Picarom. Eternatus is, like, back in a big way as well. Centiskorch and Blound still sticking in there. But yeah, it looks like vying for top deck is ADP and Picarom now. ADP has the backlog of previous weeks. I think if you were to ask most people in the format right now, they'd tell you that Picarom's probably the strongest deck. I think it's got to that point where people think Picarom's the best. So it looks like if Picarom's public enemy number 1, what are the best things we can do? Simplify our decks so that we don't lose to just Marnie and Hammers. I guess that's the problem for Eternatus, right? Even if you are playing a greedy Greatcatcher build, you still just lose if they flip heads early with Crushings. So Eternatus is coming back in a bit of a way, but I don't understand why Eternatus is kind of making a comeback, because ADP, Picarom, Mirror, Colossal all play Crushings. That's so gross. There's way too much Crushing Hammer in the format for Eternatus to be the 3rd most placing deck, but here we go. They're making top 8s at least. They're not going deep, and normally that's because they're probably just coming up against someone who hit heads, you know? And then you lose. It's so depressing to say that out loud. Centiskorch still doing pretty well, but Picarom and ADP seem to be outright kind of winners of the latest week. And let's familiarize ourselves with the total breakdown here. So I've done something as well, guys. I did a thing to this time around. We ranked the placements for total placements, but I added a air quotes CP. And this is where I weighted top 8, top 4, first and second to championship points of League Cups. So if you look at the thing, 25 points for a top 8, 32 for a top 4. The second place is 40, and the first place is 50 points. So we've weighted it to League Cup CP, which is kind of harsh because there are like 200 plus player tournaments now. And the next time I do this, I'm actually going to distinguish. I'll go back to the very start. I'll distinguish a cutoff. I think I said on my last video I was going to do this actually, but I haven't got around to it yet because I've been kind of busy. But I'm going to do a cutoff. I think I'm going to do a 1-8 cutoff because that sounds reasonable in my head. And I'll do some events that give Cup CP and then some events that give regional CP. Because we're getting to that point where, you know, there were regionals, at least in Europe, that was around that 300 player mark. Not quite for the US, but it makes more sense to weight it that way. But in terms of CP earned and placements, ADP is still top from the start of Vivid Voltage meta. Picarom is second in terms of CP, but third in terms of overall placements, which means it's getting deeper into the tournaments, which is a good thing, I guess you could say, compared to Centiskorch. So you can see the distribution, you know, like the most first places is Picarom now, by a long way. Like 10 first places compared to 6 from ADP, and then all the others are down in the 1 and 2 range. Like, that's pretty wild. Picarom is ruthlessly consistent at going deep into the tournament. I think it's because it has great defensive options, to be honest. Like, ADP has basically no defense. So if its plan A just goes badly, you just kind of like wave goodbye and lose. I guess you could argue that Crushing Hammers are your new defensive option, but I don't like Crushings in that deck at all. So yeah, you can see why Picarom's doing well. How can we react to this? I think more great catches are definitely a good thing, because we need to find a way of getting that Boltund out of the way so you can actually hit the tag team quickly. Great Catcher seems one of the best options for that. I like the Oricorio going back into ADP as well. That makes a lot of sense, so you don't just get booted by like panic paralysis plays and stamps and stuff like that. They normally try and paralyze after the Ultimate Ray though, so I'm not sure how actually impactful that is. Maybe like one of Birdkeeper's worth it in ADP, but the deck's too tight for something like that. Centiskorch, I'd definitely be playing Birdkeeper though. And by the way, Centiskorch, you know, still solidly in that third place spot. Also in the sort of top 5-6 decks. Baby Blounds, Mewtwo, and Eternatus. I think the difference between regular Picarom and Mewtwo basically is that Crushing Hammers flip heads and is a bigger win condition than having the type coverage game that Mewtwo tries to do. And I think ultimately Picarom's probably more consistent as well. So, yeah, I think Mewtwo is a really cool toolbox, but more often than not, just randomly flipping a heads in matchups is more is more impactful. And the type coverage stuff, I don't think it's that great against Pikarom anyway in like the mirror situation, because you're normally having to flood the board of energies with the Mewtwo style deck anyway, so you're using the same attacks, but you just don't have hammers on your side, so you're probably unfavored in what would be considered like a mirror match otherwise. Especially if they hit your Auroras. I guess if they don't hit your Auroras, you could go for the Miraculous Duo GX and heal. Weird. So where does that leave us? I think it's so weird. Like, Whimsicott would be really good into Pikarom if Vikavolt wasn't always a thing, and if Whimsicott didn't brick as much as it does. What's good into Pikarom? Colossal, I guess. Especially if you play the Mimikyu thing. Like, Colossal's doing okay. It's got a win under its belt now and a few top 8s and top 4s. I still think it'll stay, like, towards the bottom of the top 10 rather than, like, climbing to, like, the 4th or 5th best deck. Eternatus is still up and in there, though, which surprises me by the amount of hammers that are in the game. Luke Metal's really dipped recently, really taken a dive. I think Luke Metal's not that bad into Pikarom either, by the way. Is there something I'm missing? I guess it's just the Bolton. The power of Bolton is just really strong against Luke Metal quite often. And that's a bit of a fear factor. You can never really deal with the tag teams too easily that they probably get Boltoned off more often. And you are always getting Marnie spammed, so that kind of makes sense as well. That the Luke Metal just has to sit there Intrepid Sword passing too often. So that kind of makes sense. I'm just trying to think what the answer to Pikarom is, because they're so flexible, so consistent, and just so annoying. And there's just cheesiness with Crushings that they have a win condition on the board always if they just flip enough heads. Like, 2 heads in a turn is always just, like, so gross. Centiskorch should be still kind of okay into Pikarom, though. I think that matchup is still reasonable. Maybe just more great catches in Centiskorch can just completely blow away Pikarom sometimes. Then again, if they win the coin flip anyway, they're going to force you to go first, and you don't have that same huge wave of energies coming in and swinging onto the Pika. It's weird, right? Anyway, just thought that was some interesting data. Crushing hammers are everywhere right now, so I wouldn't be playing Eternatus. I think Pikarom is still really good. Don't really know what you can do for Mirror, to be honest, though. Senti and ADP looking pretty good as well. Pretty safe. Blacephalon, I just don't think it's being played correctly right now. Look how many top 8s it's getting and just not converting. Pretty wild. Which tells you there's a lot of strength there, but it tells you that it can just brick too much. I think that's down to the 19 energy builds that we're seeing being popularized. I think we need to take a chill pill, put a Reshizard back in, and then you actually beat the early game Marnie spam of a Pikarom more often. Marshadow sounds really important. Just chillax with the Blounds a little bit. Maybe even going down to like 2 or 3 Blounds is just correct right now, and just saying that you probably only attack with Blound like twice a game, maximum. A lot of exploration. I'm going to try and do a top 10 decks pretty soon, because we're getting, you know, like a month into Vivid Voltage now. I'm going to keep these videos going as well. It's been a real stream of consciousness, this one today, but I hope you guys enjoyed the ramble. So, yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to be doing more updated decks. The only deck I've done recently is the Pikarom. So we're going to get into the other top performers and look at my latest twist on them with the mindset that ADP and Pikarom are now the decks to beat. So, could be some cool adaptations there. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think, and see you tomorrow. Cheers.